So in this lesson we will learn what is probability of class 8 maths. So first we will learn what is probability and then some of the terms used in probability, that is certain event, impossible event, equally likely event, random experiment, possible outcomes, favorable cases, and last, how do we find probability. So if we go for a definition of what is probability, so what is probability then? In the simple sense, we can say that probability means chance of happening or not happening an event. So that's not something hard definitions or something which you find difficult to understand. So in the simple sense, what is probability? Probability means chance of happening or not happening an event. Not only happening, but even for not happening an event also, that chance is called as probability. Next, term used in probability, that is the first term, certain event. Certain event means an event which is sure to happen. By an event which is sure to happen means if today is Sunday, tomorrow will be Monday. That is sure to happen. And just the opposite for certain event, we have here impossible event. So impossible event again means an event which will never happen. Like if this year is 2020, next year cannot be 2019, which will never happen. Now, equally likely events. Equally likely event means an event which has 50-50 chance of happening. Means we have a half chance or 50% chance. So if you toss a coin, then either head can happen or tail can happen. That kinds of event is called as equally likely event. The fourth point, that is random experiment. Random experiment means again an experiment whose outcomes are not in our hand. So by outcome which are not in our hand means if we toss a coin, then whether to get a head or tail, it is not in our hand. So that kinds of experiment is called as random experiment. And the fifth point, the possible outcomes. Possible outcomes means the outcomes of a random experiment. So if we toss a coin, we can get head or we can get tailed. All those are called as the possible outcomes. These are called as possible outcomes. The final point or the last point, the favorable cases. The favorable cases means the outcomes which we are expected to get. Like in case of tossing a coin, if we wish to get a head, then the favorable case will be head, or if we wish to get a tail, the favorable cases or favorable case will be tail. So these are some of the terms used to understand the probability, and here we have the definition for probability as well. Now to understand deeply about what is this certain event, impossible event, equally likely event, and then all those terms, let's see this. So here I have some random experiment on the first case, which is drawing of a die, and in the second case here I have tossing of a coin. And why do we call this as the random experiment is when we throw a die, whether we get a number 5 or 6 or any numbers from 1 to 6, it is not in our hand. And even for the second case, when we toss a coin, whether we get a head or tail, that is also again not in our hands. So in both the cases, the experiment is a random experiment. Now for the first random experiment, that is a random experiment of throwing a dice. Throwing a die. In this first case, there is throwing of a die. The possible outcomes are, let's play, okay. The possible outcomes are 6, because from 1 to 6, any numbers can come out. So all the numbers which can come out, if we count, then we have 6 possible outcomes. So possible outcomes for the first case, that is throwing of a die, is 6. And out of this 6 number, that is, say, let's write the 6 number first. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So out of this 6 number, if we are wish to get the number 3, so if we wish to get this particular number 3, then the favorable case of getting 3 is 1, because out of these 6 numbers we have only one number or one side, which is 3. So favorable case of getting 3 is 1. And if we want to get the probability or the chance of getting this number 3 when we roll a die, then we find the probability in this way. That is probability of getting 3 is 1 by 6. So probability of getting the number 3 is 1 by 6, means this particular 1 comes from the favorable case of getting 3, which is 1, and the 6 comes from the total number of possible outcomes, which is 6. So we have 1 chance out of the 6 throws, or we have 1 by 6 chance of getting the number 3. Same as for the number 1 also will have 1 by 6, 2 also will have 1 by 6. Like that you can find out all those others probability according to the question. For this case, I am finding out the probability of getting the number 3, that is 1 by 6. Now again in the second case, here in the second case, if we throw a coin, then the random experiment of throwing a coin or tossing a coin. Let's write tossing a coin. Tossing a coin, then the possible outcomes, I know that you already know it. The possible outcomes will be 2, because either head can get or tail can get. And among these 2 possible outcomes, if we wish to get head, then positive or favorable case of getting a head, let's represent head by h. So favorable case of getting a head is 1, and then the probability of getting head, that is h, will be 1 by 2. There is half chance is there. That's how we get the probability, and we get the favorable cases, we get the possible outcomes. So once we have the idea for these possible outcomes and the favorable cases, then to get the probability is only a simple thing, fractions. That is, if we applied this in the formula or in the form of formula, then you can write probability is like this. Okay. Probability is number of favorable cases upon total number of possible outcomes. So if we apply it in the form of something like formula, or then we can think probability is number of favorable cases upon total number of possible outcomes. Is just a ratio of these two quantities. So if you understand these ideas, then now I have one question which I want you to try and test your understanding. That is, I have one question. The question is, find the total number of possible outcomes. Find the total number of possible outcomes when two dice are thrown. Instead of throwing a die, in the first case, I throw only one die, but here in this question, we are throwing two dice. So when we throw two dice, what are the total number of possible outcomes that you have to find out? So here in this case, the possible outcomes was 2, because we have here only a head and a tail. A head and a tail. But in the question which I am giving, here we have two dice, so you think of what will be the possible outcomes and list out here the possible outcomes will be what, and then we don't have any other questions. These questions, probability portions, is not there. What you have to do is only find the possible outcomes of this one. Okay, you have to only find the possible outcomes for both the questions. Even for tossing a coin, in the second case again, I have 3 coins, not 1, not 2, but 3 coins. If 3 coins are tossed together, then how many possible outcomes are there? And in the first question, if 2 dice are thrown, how many possible outcomes are there? So try this and check your understanding.